Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, and we are on the chapter entitled Krishna Instructs Vasudev. And we're studying 47 to 50 today. So it's there, right? Yes. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Asanmariche Satputra Urnayam Pratamentare Devakam Jahasur Viksya Sutam Yabitum Udyatam Asanmariche Satputra Purnayam Pratamentare Devakam Jahasur Viksya Sutam Yabitum Udyatam. So Sri Bhagavan-Vacha, we know what that means, right? The Supreme Lord said. And Asan means there were. Mariche, of Marichi, easy. Sat, like, means 6. Putra, what does putra mean? Sons, yep, sons. Oh, is it there? You're cheating, okay. Urnayam, born of Urna, this, his wife. Pratame means in the first, and Antare, the rule of Manu. Deva, demigods, come at Lord Brahma. Jahasu, they laughed. Viksya, that was, by the way, it wasn't good that they laughed. We'll find out later. Viksya means seeing. Sutam, with his daughter Saraswati. And Jabitum, to copulate, and Unyatam means prepared. So the translation, the Supreme Lord said, during the age of the first Manu, the sage Marichi had 6 sons by his wife Urna. They were all exalted demigods, but once they laughed at Lord Brahma when they saw him preparing to have sex with his own daughter. And then text 48, because of that improper act, they immediately entered a demoniac form of life, and thus they took birth as sons of Hiranyakashipu. The goddess Yogamaya then took them away from Hiranyakashipu, and they were born again from Devaki's womb. After this, O king, Kamsa murdered them. Devaki still laments for them, thinking of them as her sons. These same sons of Marichi are now living here with you. And text 50, we wish to take them from this place to dispel their mother's sorrow. Then, released from their curse and free from all suffering, they will return to their home in heaven. BBT purport. As pointed out by Srila Prabhupada in his purports to chapter 2, texts 5 and 8 of this canto, Marichi's sons were condemned for their offense against Lord Brahma. And in addition, Hiranyakashipu once cursed them to be killed by their own father in a future life. This curse was fulfilled by Vasudev's letting Kamsa murder them one by one. Om Agyana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpa Trubhyascha Kripa Sindubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I was a little hesitant to give the class today. I had a stroke 2 months ago, and I'm still kind of recuperating a little bit. But so sometimes I'm looking for a word, I can't find it, but I did prepare, so I think I covered that text, that challenge. So here we go. There's always a backstory. There's always a backstory. Now here we're hearing it about a backstory, right? Because we might think, oh, Devaki, how did that happen? Her 6 sons were all killed, and then we hear about how there was an offense against Lord Brahma. We just read about that. And then Hiranyakashipu were upset with these 6 sons because they were worshiping Lord Brahma. And he said, what? And so he cursed them. And then Kalanemi comes into the picture. And then, of course, Kamsa and Devaki. There's a huge backstory. And, of course, there's a huge backstory to Hiranyakashipu, right? And Jai and Vijay and the 3 births as demons. There's some other backstories that we learn about in the Shastra. In the Bhagavatam, King Nriga, how did he become a lizard? We hear about that, right, in the 10th canto. Certainly Bharat Maharaj and taking the birth of a deer, and then Jad Bharata. Narada Muni in the 1st canto explains how he became who he was. And I'm sure, can anyone think of any other backstories that we hear about in the Shastra? Louder? Nalo, Kubera, and Manigriva, we sing about them every evening. Hiranyakashipu? The sages of Danyakaranya, very good, yes. Well, Mataji, you have one? Who? Gajendra, yes, very good. One more? Bharat, okay, we'll take Bharat again, why not? Okay. So, but there's also a backstory about each and every one of us in this room. Vijay Prabhu, how old is your body? 70. So, where were you 72 years ago? There's a backstory there. Right? That you took, you didn't fill out a form, I want to take birth in such and such family with such and such parents, right? There's a backstory that led you to take birth in America and all the different, and for all of us, we all have a backstory. And we understand, Ajo Nitya Sashvato Yam Purana, we have lots of backstories. Right? We have lots of backstories. And do you all know that person that giving you a hard time in your life? Right? Does everyone think about that person that gives you a hard time? That there's some kind of thing going on there between you and that person. They really dislike you, maybe for no reason, or they've cheated you or something like that. Do you have that person in your mind? So, Prabhuji has. So Prabhupada once told Peter Burwash, Peter was a very, very nice devotee, he's passed away now. And he said, do not be upset at the agent of your karma. So in other words, that person who's given you a hard time, or in the past has given you a hard time, there's a backstory. There's a backstory to that as well. And it's easy to get caught up in just life and even forget these simple things. We're all, as devotees, we all know that we're spirit souls. We all know that we had previous lives. We all know these things. But isn't it, at least I can say for myself, I can get caught up in the day-to-day life or the challenges in life, and I can kind of, just that remains quite theoretical. And I don't think about, well, I have karma, and I have, even if Krishna's minimizing it, it's still there. This land has a backstory. This land that we're sitting in right now. I think just a few days ago, we had a kirtan at I think she must be passed on by now. Is she? Saraf? But the person who donated this land, we had a program at her place. That tree has a huge backstory, because that's not the tree Prabhupada sat under, right? In 1995, that tree passed away, and there was a whole speculations about why that happened. And I remember when we planted this tree, now it was very small at that time. There's backstories to everything. And who knows the backstories? Krishna, Bas. Krishna knows the backstories. He knows the full picture. We should regularly trust that Krishna knows the backstory. What's a verse about Krishna knowing everything? Bhagavad-Gita, Bhagavatam, as you like. Vedaham samatitani. Yes, right. In the 7th chapter? Yeah, right. Krishna said, I know everything, but you don't, right? He says, I can remember my past lives and you can't. He says that also in the 4th chapter. Krishna is sarvagya. He knows everything, and he's trikalagya, right? He knows everything, past, present, and future. And we don't. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more now, about this point about humility and what it means. But let's put it into a little context here by hearing from a person who knows a lot. That's Lord Brahma, right? He knows. It's said that his intelligence is as vast as his life is long. And he lives, 311 trillion, 640 billion years, something like that. It says in Bhagavad-Gita. So here's what he says. And note the verse. 10:14:7. Anyone know why I'm saying note that verse? Because the next verse, Prabhupada said, should be the guide for all devotees. So this is the verse before that. In time, learned philosophers or scientists might be able to count all the atoms of the earth, the particles of snow, or perhaps even the shining molecules radiating from the sun, the stars and other luminaries. But among these learned men, who could possibly count the unlimited transcendental qualities possessed by you, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who have descended unto the surface of the earth for the benefit of all living entities? And then he says, fast forward about 3 or 4 more verses, and he says, there are people who say, I know everything about Krishna. Lord Brahma says, let them think that way. As far as I'm concerned, I do not wish to speak very much about this matter. Oh, my Lord, let me say this much. As far as your opulences are concerned, they are all beyond the reach of my mind, body, and words. So if Lord Brahma, let's just round it off to 311 trillion, don't worry about the billions. And if we live at the most 100 years, and if his intelligence is as vast as his life is long, and if we say our intelligence is as vast as our life is long, then our intelligence is 1/3 trillionth of Lord Brahma's. You can't even imagine how small 1/3 trillionth is. It's ridiculously small, right? And he's saying, if you're in America, there's a place called Brooklyn, and in Brooklyn they say, forget about it, which is putting 4 words together, forget about it. We can't, if Lord Brahma is saying he can't understand Krishna, and if our intelligence is 1/3 trillionth of his intelligence, what should be our conclusion? Right? Should that lead us to some reality check? some humility. We see so little of reality, and yet we think we see very objectively and very clearly. Prabhupada would quote that, I don't know if it's Sanskrit or Hindi. Does anyone know? Atmavan manyate jagat? Anyone know? Okay, whatever it is, it's not English. But it basically means I'm thinking one way and everyone else should think the same way I'm thinking. It's very similar to a concept called naive realism that says, and tell me if you know someone who thinks like this, and maybe it could be you. I see the world objectively. I'm quite clear thinking. And if anyone thinks differently than me, then there's only three choices. Either they just don't have the knowledge that I have, okay, then I should inform them. Or they're really not very intelligent, or they're chalu, they're tricky, they're not honest. And many people in the world are affected by this naive realism or atmavan manyate jagat. So even when we're hearing Shastra, and we should, of course, we are trained to have Shastra chakshus, right? To see through the eyes of Shastra. And that's what we should do. And in that sense, we do know so much if we're regularly hearing Shastra. But then the humility should come in, how much do we realize? Even great devotees say they don't know everything. Here's from the 10th canto also. Because each of these princesses saw that Lord Achyuta never left her palace, each thought himself the Lord's favorite. These women did not understand the full truth about him. So even great devotees, like the 16,000 queens, they did not know the full truth. And how could we understand? What does unlimited beauty mean to you? What is unlimited beauty? Right? It's a little bit like the frog in the well, right? Well, is it 10 times more beautiful than the most beautiful woman or the most handsome man in the world? Is it 20 times? Is it 50 times? No, it's unlimited. How can our limited mind and intelligence wrap itself around that unlimited beauty? Unlimited knowledge. And luckily for us, unlimited mercy. Luckily for us, unlimited mercy. So this also means that we don't fully understand Krishna's plan. Right? Lord Bhishma Dev says, "O king," he's speaking to who? Yudhishthira Maharaj, right? No one can know the plan of Lord Sri Krishna. He says, no, right? Even though great philosophers inquire exhaustively, they are bewildered. There's that saying, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. Right? Because I'm sure everyone in this room has an example in your life of a time you were going through something in your life, and and maybe some challenge, some difficulty. And at the time you were wondering, where's Krishna's mercy in this? What's going on? Why is Krishna doing this to me? And then after it's over, whether it's a week, a month, or 5 years later, you look back and you say, oh, that was Krishna's mercy. Right? Raise your hand if you've ever had that experience. Okay, I think almost everyone, right? Prabhupada tells the story. I'll just say it briefly because I think all of us know the story of the king who lost one of his fingers in an accident, and the minister said, oh, Krishna's mercy. And you know what it's like when you're going through some difficulty and someone says, oh, Prabhu, Mataji, that's Krishna's mercy. And you kind of feel like, I'll give you some of Krishna's mercy, right? The ego's not ready for that. So the king also, so he put him in prison. And then he went to tour the kingdom and he got caught by some some people say Kali worshippers, like cannibals, whatever. They caught him and they were going to offer him up as sacrifice. And just when they were about to kill him, they saw he was missing a finger. So they let him go. And he went back to his home base and he released the minister and he said, "You're right, that is Krishna's mercy." Whew. But he said, "But how is it Krishna's mercy that you were in this terrible, smelly jail with awful food?" And the minister said, "Well, I usually tour with you. I have 10 fingers. Krishna's mercy." So, but it's hard. It's, even Bhishma Dev is saying it's difficult. So, one example that we might, so should we just throw in the towel? We can't understand Krishna's plan. Forget about it. Well, if you think about, let's say you're going a long distance by car at night, right? So you can only see as far as the headlights, right? You can't see far into the distance. You can only see as far as the headlights, but you can make it to your destination by just seeing that far. Right? So similarly with Krishna's plan, we have some understanding. We have the instructions of our spiritual master by other Vaishnavas, or just studying the books, and we kind of often, generally, we have some idea of what the next step is, even though we may not see the big picture. But if we can remember this example, you can go a great distance just by the headlights that can only go 20, 30 feet ahead, but can get us to the destination. So this hopefully can indicate some kind of approach we as Vaishnavas, aspiring Vaishnavas in my case, should take in our life as a devotee. Confirmed. Right? Have that Prabhupada talks about, he quotes that verse, Shraddha Sabbe Vishwas Kahe Surida Nishchaya. And then he says this famous line that I'm sure many of you have read many, many times, that faith means unflinching trust in something sublime. Right? It's right there in the Bhagavad-Gita. Faith means unflinching trust in something sublime. So as devotees, we trust that Krishna has a plan. And even though we're insignificant on one level, when we're practicing bhakti, we're the most significant because Krishna reciprocates, right? Ananyas chintayanto mam yejana paripasati. Tesham nitya bijuktanam yoga shema mahamyam. He preserves what we have, he carries what. There's so many verses. Ishtosi me, what's that? It's 1864. Anyway, he says, "You're very, very dear to me," Krishna says. So we want to develop this consciousness that we're living in the mercy of Krishna. In those 6 symptoms of surrender, the two that Jiva Goswami mentions as the most significant are Rakshisha Titi Vishvaso and Gotripte Varanam. Right? To think of Krishna as our protector and consider Krishna as our maintainer, to live our life in a way that we feel Krishna's presence, his reciprocation, his kindness. And not that we've figured it all out, right? We know that the word parikshit means, what does it mean in English? Yeah, examiner, right? Yeah, so he wasn't just, he was looking for that person that saved him in the womb. And even this is very exalted, but even, the 6 the song about the 6 Goswamis, Hey Radhe, Vrajavihari, they weren't, Prabhupada would often say, they didn't say, "Oh, I saw Krishna last night at the rasa dance." No, they were in this mood of, where is Krishna, and searching for Krishna. So even on the highest level, there's like that. So this mood of humility, and by pointing out that 1/3 trillionth, it's not just like, well, we should practice it because it's the right thing to do. No, it's reality. It's reality that we're not so smart. Even if we know the whole Bhagavad-Gita, all the verses in the Bhagavad-Gita, how much have we realized, right? In Dallas, the children were chanting the Guru Vandanam prayer to Prabhupada, and he stopped it and he said, "Do they know the meaning of it?" right? So it's not just, it is becoming book smart, but it's also beyond that. So this mood can permeate how we chant, how we study, how we associate with devotees, and how we see Krishna's hand in our life. And hopefully this can lead to deep humility. And in the Brihat Bhagavatamrita, it actually says that humility and prema are the same. True humility is prema bhakti. And one way I like to think about this is, now we're kind of coming down from this level to our day-to-day interaction with devotees, which is kind of my service, and so I think about this a lot. Leading a life of curiosity, like, we say, what is it, arto jigyasa artarti, and that Shonaka Rishi attained perfection by being inquisitive. But because we often don't always practice this curiosity, this humility in our exchange with other devotees. Right? How many times do we talk about or think about how we have that other devotee figured out? We know what his or her motivation is, right? And it's usually kind of negative with the way what we assume their motivation is. But we aren't curious enough to, when we see them do something, to ask them, when you did that, did you mean this? Right? To check if our assumption is correct. By the way, the number one cause of conflict in the world and in ISKCON and in the Shastra is when we make assumptions that are incorrect. Just think about the Shastra, right? Think of Parikshit Maharaj. What did he assume about Samyak Rishi, right? He assumed that he was faking his samadhi. Parvati, what did she assume about Chitraketu? That she was making fun of her husband. And, big things happened because, of course, they were Krishna's arrangement. The Bhagavatam got spoken, but still big things happened because of these assumptions, right? Parikshit Maharaj dies in 7 days because of that. In some ways, in some places it says, because of what Shringi did, that Kali Yuga started, the Bhagavatam is spoken, right? And with Chitraketu Maharaj, he becomes Vritrasura. A lot of things happen because of that assumption. And there's so many. Sachi Mata assuming that Advaitacharya was preaching to her sons about taking sannyas. In Dwarka, assuming that Krishna killed Prasena and to get the Shamantaka jewel. And so even there's rumors about Krishna. This was before social media. Right? And on. We could go on. The assumptions. So also in our lives, when we make an assumption about another Vaishnava, especially a negative one, and it's wrong or partially right, it's offensive. And we don't do a lot of cursing in it. Hopefully we don't do a lot of cursing in ISKCON. But we do a lot of Vaishnava aparadhas sometimes. I would think that there's some similar reactions to them, because the 10th canto is just full of this curse and that curse. And all the other cantos also, actually. So we should the mantra is be curious, not judgmental. Be curious, not judgmental. We hear that someone comes to us and say, "Oh, Vrajavihari, you should hear what Vijay is saying about you." Right? And then I just assume that that's right. Of course, it's gone through this other devotee's filter. So why don't I just go up to Vijay? Vijay, Prabhu, I heard this. Is there some truth to this? And we get to clarify it. And then we avoid committing offenses. And sometimes we know, we think that we're completely right and that other person is completely wrong. Now that may be true, but it may not be true. And instead of a sattvic dialogue, we get into a rajarsic or tamasic debate. In the chapter 10, verse 32 of the Gita, this word vada is there, right? And vada is this dispassionate search for the truth. And jalpa and vitanda, I won't get into the nuances of the difference because I don't remember them, to be honest. But basically, it's winning by hook or by crook. It doesn't matter if you're right or you're wrong. You just want to defeat your opponent. And do we ever see that in our society? Right? So this curiosity, I have this strong opinion, but Prabhu, I'd really like to hear your view on this. Let's sit down and have a nice sattvic, Vada-ish conversation about it. And when we're asked to give advice, or sometimes we give advice even without being asked. That ever happen to anyone? Yeah. It's good to be a little curious first. We're going to do an exercise right now. I know this isn't the standard Bhagavad-Gita procedure, but I think it'll show you something that may be helpful in our devotional lives. So think about a challenge that you have in your life. You're not going to tell anybody about it. Just think of some kind of challenge, big or small, but think of it, get that in your mind, some kind of challenge. It could be a past challenge also, but if it's a present one, that's even better. But think about a challenge that you have in your life. Okay, I'll give you 10 seconds to get that in your mind. When do we go till? 10 o'clock? Okay, got it? All right. Now, you're not going to share this with anyone, just within your mind. Answer this question. What's the real challenge here for you? What's the real challenge here for you? Think about that for 10 seconds. Got that? Okay, now answer the second question. And what else? What else is the real challenge here for you? And one more. You ready for this question? This is the major question now. Ready? And what else? What else is the real challenge here for you in that situation? So let me ask you, how many of you had something different from the first and the third one? Only a few of you. Oh my God. Okay. Usually it's like 90%. All right. Anyway, the idea is that sometimes when we're giving advice, we give advice based on the first thing the person says. But if we remain a little curious for a little longer, we can find out what's really going on. Because we may give great advice to the wrong problem. It's like operation was totally successful. We quoted all the right verses and everything, but the patient died. Right? Because we didn't fully connect with the person. So this mood of humility, of curiosity, it can permeate our lives, even on our day-to-day exchanges with one another. And then we can also, of course, bring that attitude to our chanting when we're hearing, that Krishna and his name is the same, and all the wonderful glories of the holy name, and really try to pray to Krishna that we can understand, get a glimpse of that understanding. And when we're hearing about Krishna, how he protects his devotees, right? Of course, we just had the Govardhan pastime. That's, of course, one of the most famous ones. And I was thinking, when you think about it, Krishna created Dwarka just to protect his devotees, right? The whole city was created to protect his devotees. And of course, we, in the chapter 8 of the first canto, and Kunti Devi just talking about all the times that Krishna protected her and how he fulfills the devotees' desires. I was just reading about how he fulfilled Rukmini's desire, right? And at the last minute, saved the day. And how he teaches Arjuna, he teaches Uddhava. This is amazing Krishna. Krishna is amazing. And devotional life becomes exciting. Well, exciting is maybe the wrong word. Becomes satisfying when we have this, search for Krishna in our day-to-day lives. That curiosity. What can I learn about Krishna today? Well, how can I chant his rounds better? How can I serve the Vaishnavas better? How can I interact in a more pleasing way? And Krishna, one thing that's interesting about the way Krishna tests us. If you go to school, when you go to school, you study first. Right? You study the lesson and then you get the test, right? But it seems Krishna, you get the test first, and then you get the lesson. Then you learn the lesson, right? So to be aware of the different tests that Krishna shows us, sometimes they're practically insignificant, and sometimes they're huge in our lives. But to have that experience of Krishna actively in our life is really what we're looking for. So going through life with this mood of curiosity and humility can be so satisfying as a devotee. Hare Krishna. So I left time for comments and questions, and a hand shot up immediately. Yes, Prabhu. Now let me see if I can see you.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prithu Prabhu.
One time Prabhupada said that the past is history, the future is a mystery. And the presence is the presence. It's Krishna's presence.
Very good.
Because Krishna is at any moment acting. And we tend to define suffering in our life as being outside of the jurisdiction of Krishna.
Yeah.
It is not. It's under Krishna's control. Every second. And Prabhupada, he faced the ultimate challenge of life. I have to be there. I heard it from his own voice. He said, the ultimate challenge of life is to die. You lose the life. That's the worst moment for a human being. And Prabhupada said, he faced this challenge in a wonderful way. He said, everything moving and non-moving is nothing but Krishna. His consciousness is called Krishna consciousness. And then he said, Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
It was a masterpiece.
Yeah.
It was a masterpiece of facing the challenge of life. If somebody gives us the beautiful sweet or whatever, we say, that's Krishna's mercy. But if somebody beats us into the head, we have to have the insight to understand this man is just instrument of my own karma. And we have to look beyond the immediate cause to the ultimate cause, which is yourself. Prabhupada said, when you point the finger, 3 fingers point towards yourself. So to have this insight at any moment, that you understand the presence is Krishna's presence, you have to love what is. Whether it's difficult or not, it's what Krishna still was. And that means to be Krishna conscious.
Thank you.
We see the person who does us. He's the instrument of Krishna's hands. And we are abused because we abused before. It is a history to our suffering. The abuser becomes the victim. And the victim becomes the abuser in future unless he repents, unless he solves the riddle of life, that everything is going under Krishna's control. The children, the old kids in the school, they beat young kids because they had no beat when they were young. They're acting out, they move from victim to abuser, and people go life after life from abuser, and abuser, and the next guy's victim, and again they're becoming abusers. They never get out of this unless they accept responsibility for their suffering. And forgive. You cannot forgive unless you understand this technology. You may say, well, Jesus said that You have to take it in knowledge, knowing what the views and systems of the karma. Then you can get. Otherwise not.
Thank you.
I wish.
So you brought up the point of suffering. Anyone remember what I said the number one cause of conflict is in the world? Assumptions. So the number two is unclear expectations. And when you think about it, Krishna really makes expectations clear in the Bhagavad Gita. Because I know, at least for myself, and I think most people in the world, maybe not you all, but I think life is supposed to basically be good, and every now and then there's a problem. But Krishna clarifies expectations in the Bhagavad Gita when he says, Anityam asukam loka, or dukhalayam ashashvatam, right? Alaya means like the place, like Bhojanalaya means like a restaurant, a place you get bhog, or Oshodalaya is a place you get medicine. So this is dukhalaya. So he's clarifying expectations. So really, we should be surprised when things go well.
I want to do the same thing. To hear the lecture.
Right, that should be the surprise, because he really, just think, if you don't clarify when someone joins the brahmachari ashram, wouldn't it be good if they have real clear expectations of what they can expect, how they can be taken care of, etc. When you're entering into a marriage, don't you want to have clear expectations? Well, how many children and how do we deal with the finances if you don't get that settled ahead of time? So many problems. So clarifying expectations, and Krishna clarifies that. And also you talked about being in the present, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, forget the past that sleeps, nor in the future dream at all, but be in times that are with thee, and progress ye shall call. And I was thinking about, so many times, because I deal a little bit with the outside world, sometimes these concepts that have become so popular in the outside world, they're right there, for example, in Bhagavad Gita, like mindfulness is a huge thing, right? And people attribute it to Buddhism, but Krishna said, what is it? Nasoshati nakangshati, right? In the Bhagavad Gita, he talks about be present. Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes about it. And also in the 80s and 90s, it became a really big thing to practice empathic listening, to really understand where another person is at. Stephen Covey said, first seek to understand, then be understood. But in 1972, Prabhupada wrote Balavanta Prabhu, and there he talks about how important it is to be a good listener if you want to preach to intelligent people. He said, then he gave the example of Lord Chaitanya sitting for 7 days and just listening to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And Krishna listening to Arjuna's arguments, he said, even though they were not so great in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita. And he was talking about college preaching in America in 1972. And he said, if you appreciate their point of view, which is everything about all these management books talk about, if you appreciate their point of view, gradually they will join us. And if you think about what their point of view was in colleges in 1972 is drugs, sex, rock and roll, and Mayavad philosophy. But still, if you hear them, listen to them, then also then how to preach to them. What out of the vast knowledge that Prabhupada's given us, what part we should talk to them about. So thank you for that particular. Other comments, questions? Oh, yes.
This place we are sitting in has a story.
Yes.
A story. Now I tell you the story, one of the stories. Narottam Gupta, who was Prabhupada's doctor, he told me one time that he was trying to go to Delhi on a Tonga from Vrindavan to the trunk road, Agra-Delhi trunk road, to catch a bus.
Oh, my.
So when he came to this property, this one, there was one man sitting under a tree, this tree. It was Srila Prabhupada. Having kirtan more than 20 years ago or 10 years ago before he came to the West.
Wonderful.
The Prabhupada kirtan.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Other comments, questions?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, please accept my humble obeisance. how can we apply the knowledge through which we can actually get rid of all the unwanted expectation and attachments? Because of like we many a times some natures are spontaneous. I know unwanted expectation is not good. Attachment is not good. But it comes and then
Unclear expectations are unwanted.
yes.
Yeah.
So like I know this knowledge, but how can we actually practically apply that knowledge in our life that which can help us to get rid of all this trouble? Because of holding some past samskaras, some things are very spontaneous and I'm not being able to help myself. If you can give me some practical steps.
The answer to most how can you ... is association. You associate with somebody who has that quality that you're trying to acquire or has given up that quality that you're trying to relinquish. Association, so strong, because Krishna consciousness is caught as much as it's taught. You catch it by example. Yad yad acharati shestas. Right? So there's nothing like the living example to inspire us and to show us the path to pretty much any how can I question. Okay.
Thank you, Guruji.
Yeah. Other questions, comments? Yes.
Why is Lord Brahma had sex with his daughter? In the first verse, Lord
Yeah.
Brahma is trying to have sex with his daughter, and other people are laughing about that. So can you explain that a little bit?
I was hoping no one would ask about that. Well, because I don't want to commit any offense to Lord Brahma, I'm going to talk about something that's really important that we can learn from this. And something we've learned historically in ISKCON as well. And the older devotees here can probably chime in on this. So this criticism was there, right, of Lord Brahma, and certainly if it wasn't Lord Brahma, it certainly is something that is not proper, right? But there's also a way to bring up concerns, and we can be implicated if we may be right on one level, but the way we do it is inappropriate according to Vaishnav Sadachar. And the reason I'm talking about historically is I remember seeing this quite a bit during the 1987, during the 50-man committee, right? I don't know, for those of you who don't know the history, okay, we won't go into it, but just basically there was a lot of senior devotees who felt there was some direction that wasn't appropriate that ISKCON was going in. So they got together 50 devotees, senior devotees, to talk about this. And a few of those devotees, they kind of twisted the knife. Okay, they saw what was wrong, but then they were really offensive to those who were even wrong. And they had a lot of trouble in their practice of bhakti. You could almost see that as the next subsequent months and years went on. So we can learn this. It's good to be right, but it's also good to practice the proper way to bring up something that is inappropriate. We should be able to bring up things that are inappropriate in our society, and that's kind of my service. That's why I started ISKCON Resolve in 2002, so that devotees could find a safe place that they could bring up concerns. And that was one of my inspirations, so that people could bring up concerns without the baggage of committing offenses. But I think we can learn that from this, that we can be right, but we can still be wrong by our attitude. So we should be able to speak up and bring up things that we think are inappropriate. But we can still. That doesn't mean being right means we can throw out Vaishnava etiquette. There's still a way to bring things up, and I think we can learn that from this purport. How's that for a juicy answer with 2 minutes left?
I can relate to that. I had that dilemma when I was just 18. I went to Mayapur, and it was funny because I went to this little shack and I asked Jai Pataka
Hold the mic a little bit like karaoke.
He says,
yeah.
you can stay with us in the building. I said, where's the building? He says, this shack is the building. So I walked up to the yoga pit, and one of Prabhupada's godbrothers, first he says, so how are Jai Pataka Swami and Achuchananda Swami? And he chuckles. He said, see, I know your devotees, all of them. Then he says, you know, your Swamiji, meaning Prabhupada, should not have gone to the West without the permission of this mat. So I thought, now I need to defend Prabhupada, but in a way that doesn't offend his godbrother and makes the point come out. So I'm only 18, so I kind of look up at him with the innocent child look and say, oh, really? Who started this mat? He says, my spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada. I said, oh, so he and the mat are non-different? Because I'm thinking, instead of me trying to present it, let me get him to find the solution.
Very good.
And he says, yes, but why? I said, because if Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada and the mat are non-different, and he asked my spiritual master to go to the West, then he already has the permission. I said, thank you so much for helping me clear this up. But he just went Jai. He couldn't argue against his own point. So,
yes, very good. We're going to sign you up for ISKCON Resolve. You're perfect, perfect candidate for that. Yeah, it happened to me once. I was doing Parikrama in 1979, and one of his godbrothers stopped me, and I guess I was 18, 19. Yeah, I was pretty young. No, I guess I was 21. I was very old. Yeah, and he said, "Do you know any Bhagavatam shlokas?" And I no, it was 78. So I'd just been a devotee a short period of time. And luckily I memorized one Bhagavatam shloka. It was a prayer to Lord Nrsingadev in the 5th canto about giving up material desires. And it was it's not like a really common verse. So when I quoted that, he was, oh, okay. Like that, but yes. Good. I think that means time is up. So, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare